And we'll jump into our CONCACAF Gold Cup predictions now as well. Winner, best player, golden boot, dark horse, and disappointment, and your bold prediction. We'll start off with the winner, and who do you have them playing in the final? Alex, I'm going to go with Canada against the U.S. men's national team in the final. I think the U.S. finished second in their group. Saudi Arabia wins the group. The U.S. slip up against one of Trinidad, Saudi, or Haiti, and then beat Mexico in a quarterfinal, and that's my big call. I think this U.S. team can navigate a tournament. I think that's where Pochettino might thrive, where Greg Berhalter didn't at the Copa America last year, but I do think Canada gets the win over them in a final. Who do you have?
So I like the boldness because, U.S.-Mexico, that seems the one game for whatever reason they can get up for. Canada, U.S., they seem like they could care less, but U.S.-Mexico. But no, for me, I have Canada winning. I think, again, this is just everything. Again, we said this again at Nations League, but I think they'll have learned from Nations League. They'll have learned from Nations League 2 years ago. They'll have learned from past Gold Cups. There's this certain serious attitude about this team. So I'm going Canada, bit of a homer pick, but whatevs. And then the finalist, I'm going for Mexico. I just think it's going to come down to Canada, Mexico. And I think Canada's going to want revenge because that's kind of been the one CONCACAF team that's had their number. They've loved playing the U.S., but Mexico drawing them, of course, once and beating them. Canada's going to want revenge.
And your golden boot pick for this tournament?
I went Santiago Jimenez. I think, of course, you look at teams making deep runs. I think with Canada, I'd go Jonathan David. I just don't know how much he's going to play due to rotation, if he might even be in the tournament by the end, if something happens with the club situation. So I think Jimenez, he scored for Mexico in their last friendly, or one of their last friendlies before this tournament. I think they're finally figuring out how to do the double Jimenez. He had a good Gold Cup last time when Mexico won it. I think he'll play a lot as Mexico ride kind of their maiden guys a bit more than Canada. So I'm going to go Santiago Jimenez.
I had Santiago Jimenez as well, but I also had Patrick Agyemang. If that quarterfinal goes the way that I expected, I think he could get into form for the U.S. men's national team. And if they're to make a run, as I actually expect, I think they will need goals, and it's not the most testing group. They could put up a few against Haiti, then maybe Agyemang is the guy there. Brian White.
No, Brian White.
Also, he's in the situation there, but it seems like Agyemang is the choice above him, which I don't quite get for the U.S. men's national team, but Brian White didn't exactly paint himself in great colors with his showing against Switzerland. Your dark horse of the tournament, I'm going to go with Curacao, but maybe Suriname. I did have Suriname making the semifinals in my prediction.
I like the shout. For me, I went Curacao purely because of the bracket. Group B and C, which Canada is in, because it's how it's lined up, Group A and D, I expect the U.S. and Mexico to win their groups. But that means that like Group B and C can kind of get a good path to the semifinals, so to speak, right? Because there's not that Mexico-U.S. to worry about in the quarterfinals for whoever finishes second. So I think for Curacao, they could finish second, and you look at some of the teams that they could play, Panama, Jamaica, I think some of the main options, like you'd fancy them going out and scraping out a result. So for me, it's Curacao, both in terms of their experience, like I mentioned in the section above, but also just the draw, because sometimes the reality is you have to play the draw, and those teams in Group B and C, I think, will be very happy that they didn't end up, say, where Haiti is, or, I think Guatemala is one of the teams in like Group A, or Group A, whoever it is. Mexico's group, by the way, is really, really tough. So that's something to watch.
I think there is a possibility that you see Curacao and Suriname in a semifinal, because if the U.S. slip up, suddenly you've got Mexico, USA in the quarterfinal, and then Curacao could go up against Panama, and that's a game they could win. Suriname, I forget who they would go up against. I think it's Saudi Arabia. If that plays out with Saudi winning the group in front of the U.S., that you could potentially see both those nations, the dual national nations kind of in CONCACAF, make a run to the semifinal of this tournament, of course, with Canada and what I presume to be the U.S. But also your disappointment of the tournament, and I'm going to go Mexico because I have them out in the quarterfinal.
I like it. I'm going Costa Rica. They lost to Panama in the quarterfinals of the Nations League. They've just kind of been the forgotten team. The Big Four has kind of become U.S., Mexico, Canada, Panama. And even Jamaica has shown more threat of it. Teams like Suriname, Curacao knocking on the door. Costa Rica has just kind of fallen through. And you look at that Group A. So Guatemala isn't in that group, by the way. They're in Group C. But Group A, for me, Mexico, Costa Rica, Suriname, Dominican Republic. I don't see an easy game there for Costa Rica. I know they're going through a bit of a transition phase, so I have them having a bit of a disappointment tournament, maybe not even making it out the group stage.
What's your bold prediction or surprise team in this one?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Group A. I just look at Dominican Republic. They had a bit of a rough World Cup qualifying. They didn't even make it to the next round, which is a bit disappointing because they obviously had a big few years making the Olympics a few years back. Great story. But I was just looking at their roster. I didn't realize they got Pablo Rosario, Moise Bombito's teammate at Nice, which is a huge dual national get. They, of course, got Junior Firpo, the longtime Leeds man. They've got a couple other great dual nationals in the wake of that Olympics. Of course, as we know, a couple of dual nationals do not make a team, but it's been a fun few years for the Dominican Republic. A surprise gold. The Gold Cup's always good for a few surprises. Remember Haiti 2019 and some of those other examples. So why not the Dominican Republic? The guy's known more for baseball. Hit it out the park in this tournament.
Can I say that the surprise team for me is going to be the U.S. men's national team, considering where things are right now and the run that I have them going on? But outside of the kind of quote-unquote giants of CONCACAF, I would say probably Suriname is going to be the surprise team with the run I think they can make in this tournament, just with how it plays out. And maybe that also buoys them on to getting to the World Cup as well. They were one of the teams that advanced out of the CONCACAF qualifying that closed the second round, I believe it was, this window, and they're on to the third round now.